I never ID these, but I'm going to this time because I'm recording this video. Hatred effect, let's go. Grace, okay. Made a divine. Lost 6 divine. Oh well, maybe next time. What's up everyone? Today I want to share with you a super budget consuming dark build. Right at the 2 divine mark, I was able to hit around 40 million pinnacle DPS, and there's still a lot of headroom. The build gets there with 2 damage conversion steps. First from Phys to fire, and then from fire to chaos. Conversion, if you've not done a lot of it in PoE before, is one of the most efficient ways to scale damage. Each type of damage scaling acts as a multiplier to the one after it. Explosive Trap is the physical spell I'm using that has 50% of Phys converted to fire baked in. We're getting a second layer of conversion by dual wielding consuming darks, each of which convert 30% of fire to chaos, and outside of Infernal Mantle is the only way to do this conversion of fire to chaos. And coupling that with the new mastery in the 321 patch, which allows us to convert almost all of the remaining Phys damage directly to chaos, about 90% of our total damage is hitting the enemy as chaos. Despair and Wither are providing a ton of additional chaos damage, and we're also crit capped, which I'll get into how exactly in just a minute. The rest of our damage comes from scaling fire, Phys, and chaos damage, and flat gem levels. Before we get too far, I want to talk about the pros and cons. So we'll start with the pros. It has easy access to high DPS. That's the primary pro. It has reasonable survivability, though not amazing survivability, but that's fixable with a bit more invested. It has easy access to max rolled uniques. I paid 1C for each of my weapons, and both of them are max rolls. And there are lots of cheap upgrades to make it either tankier or make the damage quite a bit higher, depending on your preferred style of play. Now, the cons are it's a trap build, and if you don't like traps, you're not going to like this build. There's not really a way around that. It uses a sunblast, which means you need to be deliberate about where you place your traps. You can't rely on the trap going off. You need to be intentional about where you place it. And there's somewhat variable DPS because you need to manage totem life to maximize your DPS output. It's also movement speed wise a bit slow at the 2 divine invested level, but you can mitigate that with a bit more investment. And most importantly, it's a modest mapper at best. If you're running a ton of maps, this is probably not the build for you. This is a build designed to do bossing on a budget. Quick gear overview. The centerpiece of the build is a pair of consuming darks. These are massive for the build. So +1 to fire skill gems, which boosts our main skill, 60% increased fire damage on both of them, 30% of our fire converted to chaos, and 60% chance for our chaos damage to poison enemies. Now, we have 60 on each weapon. That means we have a guaranteed poison every time we hit with chaos damage, which enables toxic delivery, which grants us a base 2% crit, which is absolutely massive for hitting crit cap. Next, we've got a really cheap +1 all gems amulet I paid 10C for. Another ring that I paid 10C for, it's a despair ring. And then both of these have the mana cost craft on it, which you'll need to help reduce the cost of explosive trap. I'm using high voltage mainly to help us fit the budget, but this is a nice 100% crit chance that costs almost nothing in oils. A Ming's Heart because it's a huge amount of extra damage. I'm using a Sunblast because it also triples our damage. Now, if you're going to do this, I would highly recommend you get a 70% or higher reduced trap duration. You see the roll range is 75 to 50. You want 70 to 75 and probably nothing lower, especially at this point in the league. They should be widely available. I paid 25C for this. A really simple pair of boots and gloves. These unnerved gloves I paid 19C for. I bought them with unnerve rolled on it because I knew that I wouldn't make the budget if I had to roll unnerve myself. And then I hit it with some essences to get the rest of it. This is just a fractured, this is basically a res and life pair of boots with a crit strike chance and a 1C helmet that had the enchant that I wanted on it. I paid 80C for this base with +2 AoE gems, and then I used about 90 chaos worth of tainted currency to 6-link it and then color it with chromatics. And yeah, that is the gear overview. I'm going to talk about the passive tree in PoB so that I can a little more clearly demonstrate the utility of some of the nodes. And let's start up here. So these 2 wheels account for 31.7 of our total damage. So we're at 46 million here, and this is set to pinnacle. And if we drop both wheels, we're down to 31.7. Now, the reason for that is a bunch of our conversion comes from here. 40% of Phys converted to chaos is 13.2% of our damage. And then we're using 40% increased physical damage with skills that cost life. This is, if you remember, the first step in our conversion. So Phys is first. So we're getting 9% there. And the reason that this works is because we are actually paying life. We're using the life mastery to help offset some of the costs. It also just happens to be a nice damage boost. There are several other really high value nodes around here, around Chaos and Phys. So Fangs of the Viper is a prime example, almost 6% damage just with this one node. This whole Phys wheel here, Will of Blades is nice. And these are things that you might not otherwise take on a trapper in this area. And it's all really nicely compact in this right side of the tree. Let's talk about how we're crit capped next. So there are a bunch of nodes like Assassination and various small nodes like the crit wheel that provide us some amount of crit chance. There's a 6% spell base crit chance on Explosive Trap, and we're using Toxic Delivery to give us an additional +2 base crit. So you'll remember our Consuming Darks guarantee that our cast damage poisons. And so it's really easy to get 4 stacks of poison with a skill that hits as fast as Explosive Trap. So we get a free 2% base crit. And in addition to that, we get 25% more damage with our poisons, which is pretty significant. Now, on top of that, if you look at our gear, we have a boot enchant, which is 120% increased crit strike chance. If you haven't crit recently, this is the Pog Trapper enchant. You should always have this if you're doing any sort of crit and you're not attacking with something else, because it's a free 120% crit. And then on my amulet, I'm using High Voltage, which is another 100% crit chance. It's worth pointing out that I'm using a Forbidden Flame and Flesh Jewel, and the price of these fluctuates on demand. I paid 4C and 10C, and you can see that at the beginning of the video. And right now there are a ton on trade for between 10 and 15C, but that's subject to change depending on demand. I'm using 3 very inexpensive cluster jewels here. I'm using a large with chaos damage. The only 2 I care about are Grim Oath and Wicked Paw, and really they're not super necessary. They were just kind of nice to have, and I found this for, I think, 40C on trade, so it was worth picking up. This medium cluster I paid 1C for and just rolled Guerrilla Tactics and then Regaled. I don't actually care about Expert Sabotage. Well, one, it's a mind skill, so and then an Enduring Composure cluster. This is a nice defensive layer. Do not buy these off of trade. Buy the cluster for 1C and then hit it with 30 or 40 alts to hit Enduring Composure. It's considerably cheaper. For Ascendency, I took Polymath. That's the layup, the one that you always want to have. I also took Escape Artist, and you'll look at my gear, you'll see that I have an ES base helmet and a high evasion base chest. Now that is on purpose, and the reason for that is Escape Artist. It provides a ton of energy shield and evasion for us, and it's worth getting. I know a lot of people sort of dump on this, but it is actually a very, very strong Ascendency notable. Spellbreaker is absurdly broken, helps us suppress cap and prevent additional spell damage. And then Swift Killer and One Step Ahead are kind of interchangeable. This is a bit more damage, but this is a bit more quality of life. And also, if you're doing Uber Elder, I would highly recommend you switch into One Step Ahead because you don't have enough movement speed to fully offset the puddles that grab you. For our gems, let's start with our main 6 link. So I'm using Explosive Trap, Inspiration to help offset the cost, Conk Effect, which is the highest DPS support you can use, increased critical damage, again, second highest damage support you can use. I'm using Anomalous, Trap, and Mind Damage. At this point in the league, it's 9C for a 20 quality one. You want 20 quality. I paid 9C for a level 19. I don't actually care about the level. I cared about the alt quality, which reduces cost. And then Charged Traps. Charged Traps is super strong. It provides a ton of, and because we're stacking Frenzy Charges, a ton of additional crit multi and trap throwing speed. So this is my 6 link setup. In my helmet, I'm using Grace, Skitterbots, a level 3 Enlighten, which was 37C at this point in league. And I alternate between Herald of Purity, a combination of Herald and Purity plus Herald and Ash, or Determination, depending on the content I'm running. So if I need to be slightly tankier, like say Uber Elder, where I want to survive a little bit longer, I'm using Determination. If I want extra damage, I'm using Heralds. In my gloves, I'm using Whirling Blades and faster attacks. I just bought these from the vendor. It's a really nice quality of life to be able to move that fast. And I'm using Assassin's Mark and Arcanist Brand to help us crit cap. So I throw the brand down, my Despair Ring does a second curse, and then we go from there. In my boots, I've got my Wither Totem set up. So this is a pretty standard bossing setup. Wither, faster casting, multiple totems, and spell totem. I tried out Withering Step, and it just felt a little better with this. Let me know in the comments if there's a better way to do this. I'm interested in learning. I've got Immortal Call set up on a cast when damage taken. And then my last link is a Frostblink and a level 1 clarity so that I can use a Watcher's Eye that reduces the cost of non-channeling mana skills. I have an Enduring Cry socketed here, and the reason for that is it's a really nice extra bit of health regen if you need it and you're low on potions and you're uber bossing. So if you have a free socket, this is actually really nice to have. All right, Exiles, that's all I have. I hope this was informative or interesting to you in some way. I think on poe.ninja, I might be the only consuming dark user not scaling the poison and instead scaling the chaos hit. So maybe this is something interesting and unique that you haven't seen yet. If this was useful to you, like and subscribe to let me know that this is content that you'd like to see more of. And we'll see you in the next one. Take care.